to jump right into the show because right now we are joined by Ward 7 ANC Commissioner Joel Castón and Washington Informer staff reporter Sam P.K. Collins. In this week's issue of the Washington Informer, Sam writes about the transfer of 400 D.C. defendants to a federal facility. The jail, the D.C. jail is, believe it or not, a 149-year-old facility built in 1872. But in recent years, overcrowding, lack of air conditioning, and other issues have been the source of complaints by inmates and their families. And since the January 6th insurrection and the influx of inmates who've come in from out of state, those conditions have become a top priority for the District of Columbia and the federal prisons. And so some of those prisoners, about 400 that's predicted, will be reportedly transferred to federal prisons across the country. Sam and Commissioner Castón, thank you so much for being here and helping to set the record straight. I just outlined some issues, but I'm not sure if I'm on point with them all. And so I'm sure both of you all can clear them up. And I'm going to hand it over to you, Sam, and Commissioner Castón. But thank you so much for being with us today.
As always, many thanks for the opportunity, Denise and Commissioner Castón. Such a pleasure to be able to speak with you again. We had a chance to speak on Tuesday after your lawyers successfully fought on your behalf to not get transferred to Lewisburg. Would you mind speaking about that with us briefly?
Sure. First, I'd like to say thank you for having me this morning. The Washington Informer is doing a great job articulating these very important matters. My victory was bittersweet. As you stated, Sam, my attorneys were successful in stopping me being transferred because of my parole matters. However, my constituents, 97 to be exact, have already been transferred into federal custody. It is something that we taken to be very outrageous. I can say this here, Sam, that inside the facility, fear is haunting the halls and the hearts of my residents here, my constituents here. No one wants to be transferred to a facility such as Lewisburg, which has been on record as being an inhumane location and facility itself. So that definitely is the remedy why we do not argue against the findings of the condition on the CDF side of the facility. One thing I would say, Denise, that facility was actually, I believe it's 44 years old. It's not as old, but it is definitely older than the facility, the CTF side where I'm currently housed at now. However, Lewisburg, where many of my constituents are being transferred to, is significantly older than the CDF side or the Central Detention Facility, which is commonly known as DC Jail. So it isn't a remedy. It is the answer to what was found. And the fact that we had outside forces coming inside of our locale, doing the investigation and then coming in with a remedy that clearly none of my stakeholders, none of my constituents have endorsed, is definitely outrageous. I stated before, and I'll say it again, fear is haunting the halls and hearts of my residents inside of this single member district, that is to say, DC Jail.
And I really appreciate that answer. And I really empathize with you as you express the fear that is ruminating throughout the halls. It's my understanding that there are some inmates who are filing injunctions to pretty much stay in place. Would you happen to know about the progress that some of them are making or what's going on, as some of those 400 are attempting to stay?
No, I don't. I'm not privy to that information. I'm quite certain that if they're doing so, it's probably being done so in their legal capacity with their attorneys, which had to be an attorney-client privilege associated with that right there. I'm not aware whether or not a larger organization has taken it up, such as like Public Defender Service or Washington Lawyers Committee or things of that nature. But if they are, and if they haven't, this is a great time to do so. And the other thing I want to say also, the fact that because these are people, as you know myself, Sam, I personally fight against the word inmate. That it's a terminology that has been utilized against incarcerated people, which can somewhat be desensitizing, right? And so we do want to see them as people and who happen to be incarcerated. But I don't have a direct answer to your question right there, but I would say this here, this would be a good time for public defenders and other legal entities to step in and to help those individuals to remain in place, that they may adequately fight in their legal affairs, which is extremely important. There's no way you can perform your legal duties being so far away. We know that right now, being able the cost associated with making such a travel, that itself that can't be maintained. That's number one. And number two, it's very difficult to maintain a relationship with your family members when you're being so far away. So it needs to be something in place that can ensure that those residents can remain here while they're working out their legal matters.
And if I recall correctly, you made some of those points during your testimony before the council's committee on the judiciary on Wednesday. Would you mind speaking more about that?
Yes. First, I would say definitely kudos to Councilmember Charles Allen, his leadership in that capacity, assembling the convening of on such a short notice on an issue that is so important as this matter here that we're discussing right now. During that time, I really want to make sure that they understand that, number one, as I stated, no one in the inside are disputing those findings. But what they are disputing, the fact that the remedy that was prescribed rather, sending people so far away from their family members. And there's definitely an outrage, the fact that this has came to light. First and foremost, we know that the condition inside of this carceral space, and any carceral space for that matter, is not conducive. It hasn't been conducive here in DC jail for quite some time. But it came to light when we had less than 0.1% raising this matter, which happened to be Caucasians, white people, who brought this into the forefront. And now they're prompting an investigation and then a swift decision to send my constituent so far away from the District of Columbia. That's where the outrage lies at. It lies in the fact that this came in as something that is not new. It just came about. And now, because of political muscle that these individuals have, they utilize their ties to bring awareness to their condition, their plight. And then when the findings was done, this side, the CTF side, the Central Treatment Facility side, was deemed to be suitable. But the other side, the CDF side, was deemed to be unsuitable, which we know that's an aging facility. It's been that way for long. And so what I wanted council members to take in consideration that we need a new facility. We definitely need a new facility. There was a lot of investigation about a new facility. No, it hasn't been any concrete date or funding about a new facility, but I found on that record that the council members are also in favor of a new facility, because this is what the people are clamoring for. But we don't want a facility that's simply a warehouse. We got to get away from that model warehousing. Frankly, where I'm currently at right now in the young men emerging community, we have created a model that's more equitable for incarcerated people. And so the new space has to be a new space, but it can't be following the model traditionally running the mill of being a warehouse. It can't be that. And the next thing I brought to their attention was the simple fact that we need an oversight. We need an oversight that consists of stakeholders, people who are here, Washingtonians. Washingtonians prescribing what's best for Washingtonians and not outside telling Washingtonians what's best for them. So we need community stakeholders to be a part of that convening, that they can. Councilmember Charles Allen did something that was remarkable in the year of 2019. He held a public hearing inside the facility. I would like to have an oversight hearing inside the facility that the council members and the community at large can hear from the people who are on the inside. We need to hear from the people on the inside. Sure, I'm happy as the commissioner to represent my constituents on the inside, but it'd be even more impactful if they were able to hear directly from the people also. So having an oversight hearing, you can hear from the people, can state what they believe is best and the need to be done about fixing the aging side of the facility and bringing forth a renovation that would be more suitable for the people who live here and work here. Those are the two primary points that I brought up. And the final point I brought up is the advocacy for statehood. The fact that the federal government has the knee on our neck and can come in and do whatever they want to do, and DC has no say so in the matter, is a clear indication why we should have statehood here in the District of Columbia.
You brought up so many good points, sir. I'm trying to figure out what direction we can go in as far as the next question, but I want you to briefly speak about your program with the young men that are in the facility. You know, when we're speaking about reform and not warehousing these facilities, how have you been able to create an environment that is suitable for the people coming in?
Oh, Sam, that's a good question, Sam. And to answer that question, the first thing I want to do, I want to acknowledge the leadership of Quincy L. Booth. Quincy L. Booth had a vision. His vision was to say, building off the science that the frontal lobe of the brain doesn't develop until the mid-20s, right? This is scientifically proven. So the way we treat our younger people, hold them to a harsher condition that as relates to their elder counterparts or their older counterparts, right? It's not suitable scientifically. They don't have the capacity to be able to weigh the consequence of actions. So what Director Booth did was he pitched that idea and he said, hey, let's run with it. There was a lot of study have been done in Norway. Norway has been the vanguard in this particular regards here with treating their inside incarcerated people more equitably, more fairly. And so we said, let's do this. I was sought out because of some of my things that I was doing on the inside. And they're like, hey, they want to have up a new program based on mentorship. We threw your name in the hat. What you think about that? I immediately said yes. My personal story is I've been incarcerated since the age of 18. So the 18 and 25, and now I'm currently 45. So that's 27 years of direct justice involvement that I have. It means a lot to me. I know how I felt when I first came in. So I began to come in here with my colleague and co-founder mentor, Michael Woody. And what we did was we built upon our lived experience. We built upon the wisdom that we gained. I've been in 16 facilities. I like to say I had my eyes open the whole time. By the grace of God, I haven't succumbed to the things that are associated with a prison environment. So I know what works and what doesn't work. And so I was able to implement some of these programs and some of these ideas and concepts within this community. So first thing I did was I made sure you understand it's a community. Many of my guys never understood or heard the word of community until they came inside the Young Men Emerging YME community. So I want to instill in them the sense of being a community member and being a part of community. With that comes a mindset. And so what Michael and I did, we tried to do everything that hinges along the lines of normalcy. Thus, we don't wear the traditional orange uniform inside of our community. We wear garments that's more humanizing, so we can think like a person. One of the most ingenuity ideas that my co-founder mentor and I did was we created a money system. Here's our currency right here, right? I'm Jerome Powell in here. I'm the Federal Reserve Chairman. It's a known fact that I'm a financial geek. So I build upon my financial knowledge and say, hey, let's have a bank. Because it's a known fact that people that come disinvested in the marginalized community don't have a banking relationship. So what we did was we created a bank. And I also created currency for that bank. And that bank, we was able to sell to the administration staff that within our community, we have a barbershop, we have a different amenities by which our people can feel good about themselves. And the way they can have access to this stuff is by utilizing the YME money. And so I backed the YME money by first we came out our own pockets and bought commissary items. And we say, hey, here's commissary items for the guys that don't get money from their family members and loved ones. We're about to stuff ourselves. Put it in our YME store. You can use our YME money to buy these items. So what happened is that I incentivize good behavior. When you do good things, like for example, YME money is big in here. I'm big on writing reflections, right? So when you do book reports, you can do a book report. You can turn it into one of my mentors, and I'll pay you for it. You can use that same money to buy some of the things you want from the YME store. Brilliant. I want to use that same idea into our community. Because although I'm receiving a lot of accolades for my work on reentry, I believe that no entry trumps reentry. We got to turn off the faucet that my good friend Terrence Davis talks about. We need to turn off the faucet, stop people from coming in from the beginning, invest on the front end. We know that disinvesting communities are not receiving their fair share in investment. So once we know the people that come from Ward 7 and Ward 8, these are the individuals who have been funneled into the penal system. These are the individuals that have been funded inside of carceral spaces. Why not invest on the front end, reverse the practice of redlining that took place? We had a Community Reinvestment Act in 1977, yet Federal Chairman Jerome Powell is still being drilled today and saying what advancements have the CRA, the Community Reinvestment Act, done inside of these disinvested community. We know the answer.
You're bringing up a lot of good points. So, with all of that, I have to ask you, given what we've seen with the quick response that the federal government gave in light of the January 6th insurrectionist complaints, what opportunities do we have to rectify all of those inequities that you spoke about? How does that look from this point on now that all eyes are on DC?
Yeah, this is a time for us to act fast and swiftly. And making sure that DC has statehood. Statehood is extremely important. Taxation without representation is playing out right before our eyes and it's been happening for far too long. This is a time we can see that I'm so happy in my personal capacity that I was able to avoid transfer. only by the grace of God because of my legal affairs, my attorneys. It had nothing to do about this other stuff. It was strictly about my personal case. However, if the mayor of this city wanted to say, I do not want Mr. Castón to be transferred, she would have zero power. Zero power to stop it. This is why we need statehood. On a myriad reasons why DC needs its own statehood. The fact that we can be transferred from one place to another, 27 years incarceration in 16 different facilities. It's not as easy as saying you're getting on the bus and you're going to somewhere else. You're not catching an Uber here. You've been handcuffed oftentimes for 12 hours straight. You've been subjected to body cavity search, which sometimes leads to sexual molestation, sexual abuse. This is what happens when your loved ones are being transferred from one location to another. This is the story of DC inmates. This is the story of DC incarcerated residents. This is why they call us inmates, because you're saying you could just move them like cattle. So we don't have an ownership, or we don't have a say-so on our own people within our own jurisdiction. Then what authority, what power do we have?
When I spoke with you earlier this week, you said that people from DC inside the federal correctional facilities are often treated as a game. Would you mind speaking more about that? What beyond what you said already, what are some other issues that DC people go through when they enter federal facilities hundreds, thousands of miles away from their home?
One of the things I would say, because the fact that it's hard to understand is legal wise, right? You have this, your legal matters are tied up to DC code. However, you're being judged by federal codes. So that's a hybrid right there. They don't know how to, they being the administration don't know how to deal with. I heard it so many times, like, we don't know what to do with you DC guys, because we don't know how to even administer our job with you, because it's so confusing from a legal standpoint. Point number two, because we come from DC, we have the moniker of DC blacks has been cast upon us. And anyone knows DC. DC have crews. We never had gangs. Never had gangs. However, under being filtered within that system, we're treated like a game. And so what happens is that, now understand this here, the people in Pennsylvania and all these other places, they know that a large group of DC guys are coming in. Now it's about territory. They want to maintain what they have. And inside, there's politics inside the carceral spaces also. That looks like real estate for TVs and TV rooms and, and certain locations and favorable locations on the rec yard, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So now you have a demographic that's outside of DC from these other, they call them cars, they're geographical locations. And now they all band together to go against DC. And then the administration themselves, they say, we don't like you DC guys. Then the administration going against DC. So DC is catching hell from the moment they come in to the moment they come out. And for the individual that was transferred here, they was happy to be here, yet to the chagrin of being transferred back to a place where they no longer want to be.
Forgive me, I'm just at awe with everything that you said. In my interviews with other advocates for justice reform and returning citizens, I hear, these things, but you said it probably the most poignantly and most on point out of all the people that I've spoken with over the last couple of years. Before we wrap up, what is the message that you want to leave with our audience, this afternoon? What is it that you want them to take away from everything that you just said?
We have to advocate for a new facility. This new facility cannot be a traditional run-of-the-mill. It has to have the infrastructure in place where we can start thinking about reentry from day one. Reentry starts from the first day of incarceration. We need to get our people on the inside registered to vote so they can become a part of the democratic process. The next thing we need to do, we have to renovate the CDF side of this facility. The main jail, DC jail. We need stakeholders to be a part of that. They need to be more equitable. We need to get natural light coming in inside. We need to get that ventilation system fixed. We need to have people that's there who's dedicated and committed to making sure that the inside residents are being treated like human beings. And finally, we must do everything we can to clamor for statehood. Statehood is extremely important. This is the time to rally behind our politicians to advocate and demand for statehood for DC.
Commissioner Castón, everyone, on ANC Single Member District 7F07, which not only includes DC Jail, includes the Harriet Tubman Women's Shelter and a new development, if I recall correctly.
That's correct.
Thank you so much, sir. And thank you, Denise. Appreciate you as always.
No, I appreciate both of you. Commissioner Castón, you couldn't have articulated the issues any better. I'm sure you could have, though, because you just do well. But I mean, we want to make sure that this message gets out to everybody that's had a chance to hear what's going on. You're right. I love that idea about having a hearing inside of DC jail. Folks just don't know, they really don't know. And I think that's a good idea. And we're going to advocate for that, help to advocate for that as well as the other issues that you've mentioned. You all had a great conversation. This will not be the last time.
Thank you.
We're on a mission.
For having me.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sam.